Yeah, the sun is really bright. Good, good, thank you. Did we start a full read on this one or?
In this area?
Okay. All
What's
right.
that?
Yeah, I can read that. I know, I was just listening to that. It's so ridiculous to us. It's pathetic. Yeah, there's shit going on down around the Catalina Mountains with
Yeah.
what's her name's mother. Mm. Well, when you look at these areas, it's obviously, you go back to 2008, it reminds us of around here in 2008. Yeah, you have a cartel area, issues going on with the vaccines being ignored, SSRIs. It's the same thing, cartel area, news people ignoring the vaccine issues. Wasn't it the Today Show Robert De Niro went on trying to get them to, yeah, and they ignored it. Even the doctor that went on there was like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Amazing how people are playing stupid to that stuff. So yeah, back in 2008, same thing up here. We're in Maine, cartel area. Yeah, Governor Hill Mansion, Augusta, Maine. Name's Mary. I have 4 children here. My youngest 2 are in the hands of sick, murderous pedophiles. I make child and animal pornography. The private investigator in 2009 was bringing up concerns about these punks targeting people and the sick shit they do. And if they didn't wake up, their own daughters may become victims, as we did. The other ones have moved away. One of my sisters is still hanging around, a half-sister. They still live in the area, yeah? I don't know, I haven't talked to them in years. Yeah, hopefully. Absolutely sick and disturbing. So yeah, people were trying to expose a lot of that stuff with the fraud, the abuse, the neglect. Opened up the door for some evil stuff. And these punks got away with killing us. Other people disappeared. Private investigators killed themselves. Some doctors were killed. One is still under investigation. Dr. Winstar from out in Windsor, still under investigation. Yeah, and of course on the streets too. I mean, you had people connected to those things getting stabbed and overdosing left and right. Cats and dogs, as they say. Oh, we're gonna start from the beginning on this, yeah? Give Me Souls. We've read this one a few times. Someone requested we read the beginning for today's class. Yeah, so that was back in 2008. Same thing, cartel area, ignoring the issues with the vaccines, drug trafficking from the street, prescription, legal, not legal, the psychedelics rolling through, people going into recovery. It's a common thing when people come off of prescription drugs or street drugs or have a traumatic event happen to them and having a hard time coping with it. For some reason, it gets associated to Buddhism, and people just take it to the extremes. Yeah, it's just stupid, sick rhetoric. Oh, here come the homos. Oh, here come the gurus. Oh, here come the whatever. You know, it's stupid granolas, druggies, white supremacists, racists. It gets so fucking old and stupid, and it's amazing to us that a lot of the news people play into it. So yeah, it's like the same thing. Cartel area, people ignoring the issues with vaccines and medications, healthcare systems, public schools, healthcare. It's all the same exact fucking things we've been talking about. And this is very, very, very scary and disturbing to us, how people are ignoring what's been happening here with us and our children, and how you stupid fucking cunts and pieces of shit around here continue to pretend like it's not happening. It's sick and it's gross, and I'd pack your shit and get the fuck out of here if I were you. You know who I'm talking to. Oh yeah, full read. I keep going to do a random, don't I? Just force a habit or something. Now, is that muscle memory or just me being mindless? How about a spasm? Right, like if I'm sitting a certain way and all of a sudden something starts to go numb, Is that muscle or nerves? Okay, so if the muscle starts to spasm from a nerve, sometimes if you're pushing on a nerve or something, it can start to quiver. Right, so if you get a spasm, which you can't control, it just starts to happen. Oh my gosh, my muscle's twitching. How's that happening? I'm not telling it to do it, but I can feel it. Look, it's twitching. Mm-hmm. Take it with a grain of salt, huh? Oh, now it's in my leg. I can feel it. It's twitching. Does it hurt? Is it bothering you? No, it's just, it's moving all on its own. Maybe you just need to change positions, take a slow breath. No, it's because they're being mean. It's bothering me. It's that noise. That noise is just annoying me. Is it giving you a twitch? Or? Right, so sometimes what happens if we're holding it in? Eventually stuff starts to build up, maybe. Yeah, there's different, it's all connected to different. You have spasms and stuff going numb, twitching. I got a pain in my neck. I got a thorn in my side. A kink. You got a kink? Yeah, exactly. All right, 1957, Give Me Souls. This is a good book. We are, let's see. Okay. Yeah, good. To Our Lady, Mother of Sorrows. In obedience to the decrees of Pope Urban VIII and other sovereign pontiffs, the writer declares that the graces and other supernatural facts related in this volume, as witnessing to the sanctity of servants of God other than those canonized or beatified by the Church, rest on human authority alone, and in regard thereto, as in all things else, the writer submits herself without reserve to the infallible judgment of the Apostolic See, which alone has power and authority to pronounce as to whom rightly belong the character and title of saint or blessed. February 4th, 1957, copyright 1958, Newman Press, Library of Congress, catalog number 5711804, printed in the United States of America. It sounded different? As I usually say, card. Library of Congress catalog card number. And I said catalog number. You caught it. Good job. They have good ears. Forward. This is the story of a man of great and simple faith, gentle and humble in his extreme modesty, monastic in his private life, a seeker of souls and a lifelong friend of the poor and the destitute, in a world less conscious of their plight and social betterment than the one in which we live today. Devoid of all personal and worldly ambition, Raphael Cardinal Merry de Val was given vital responsibilities at an early age, but just as he never sought greatness nor power, neither did he shirk his duty towards God and the Church. He did not wish for fame or glory, nor the applause of the multitudes, because his personal fulfillment lay only in doing the will of God. It was his extraordinary privilege to serve a truly great and saintly Pope, to whom he willingly dedicated the best years of his life. During an era as critical and menacing as our own, in which it directly preceded, Raphael Cardinal Merry de Val faced the enemies of the faith at the side of the Vicar of Christ with unfailing courage and relentless determination, trusting in God and secure in the conviction that the Church would survive till the end of time, strengthened, purified, and triumphant by strife and persecution.
Just watching all the birds fly over there to the top of the roof. You see them all up there.
Picture this. Saving up to 10% when you bundle your own plan
Oh,
on.
I'm trying to make it so you can see the top of the roof. Yeah, there's a lot of birds up there. It's a popular time. They like to go perch up on the roofs because the sun has the top nice and warm for them to go sit.
But because his true vision lay in the guiding of those outside, fallen or strayed from the true faith, and in opening every heart to God, Cardinal Merry del Val would never have approved of a biography dealing with him merely as a prince of the church or as a great Catholic statesman on whose youthful shoulders rested the great responsibilities, both spiritual and temporal, of the Vatican. Therein, I think, lies the chief merit of this excellent and extremely well-informed book, whose author has tried to take it, as much as possible, what the Cardinal himself would have wished to be, had he been less adverse to every form of personal publicity. The simple human story of a contemporary apostle of Christ our Lord, whose burning ideal and only ambition he himself summed up in these words: Da mihi animas catera tole, give me souls, take away all else. The Marquis de Merry del Val, the Embassy of Spain, Copenhagen, Denmark, November 1957. Da mihi animas catera tole. It is spelled like Eckhart Tolle. You're right. Acknowledgements. For the material used in Give Me Souls, I am indebted not only to the sources listed and its conclusion, but also to letters graciously sent in response to my inquiries, made to those whose lives were linked to that of Cardinal Raphael Merry del Val, either by blood, friendship, or acquaintance, and to those who, for other reasons, such as research or location in Rome, were in possession of relevant information. A Life of Raphael Cardinal Merry del Val. The child is father to the man. Merry del Val, what kind of name is that? Joe Peterson used to tease his friend Mary when they were in school together at Usha. The story of that time is indeed an interesting one. Originally, Raphael Merry del Val's ancestors were called O'Hulican and lived in the little village of Hymain, County Connaught, Ireland. Is that where the term hooligans comes from? Possibly. They are from Ireland, probably. In the 17th century, however, the old hooligans of Hymain began to use the English translation of their surname, Merry, in order to avoid persecution. In the last half of the 18th century, a representation of his family, Thomas Merry, who had been educated in England and had settled in Waterford, fathered a son, Richard, who when grown decided to look up some land he owned in Spain. Once there, he liked it so well that he took up residence in Seville, where he prepared rapidly. Seville, Seville. From Richard Merry sprang two branches, one known as Merry Y. Colon, the result of intermarriage with the family of a duke reputed, though inaccurately, to be descended from Christopher Columbus, and the other, Merry del Val's, after Richard's fourth child, Raphael Merry Y. de Gat, had married Donna Maria de la Trinidad del Val y Gomez,
and combined her surname with his own. From the latter union, Raphael, the father of Cardinal, was born in 1831. On his mother's side, he was a member of the family of the child martyr Dominguito del Val, crucified by Jews against a wall on September 1st, 1250, at the age of 7, and venerated in a rich chapel at Saragossa. At the death of her husband, Donna Maria de la Trinidad moved to Madrid with her 3 children, Rafael, Trinidad, and Luisa, to occupy rooms in the palace of Queen Isabel, who had named her as a lady-in-waiting. It was here that Raphael spent his youth, forming a friendship during those days with Eugenia, later Napoleon's empress, which was to stand him in good stead when once his diplomatic career began, after his education at the University of Madrid. Soon the young Raphael was appointed secretary to the Spanish legation at London, no embassy existing there at the time. Here he moved among the lively social circle of the Spanish colony, gaining the friendship of a fellow diplomat, Don Pedro de Zaleta, son of the second Count Torre Diaz, and of a family originally from Spain. At the home of Don Pedro, Raphael became acquainted with the older daughter of the household, Josephine, a deeply spiritual young lady who had been educated on the continent by the religious of the Sacred Heart. Josephine's mother was the Scottish Sophia Anne Wilcox of Protestant stock. Since at the time of the birth of his 2 children, Don Pedro, poorly instructed in religion and influenced by a rationalistic cousin, had fallen away from Catholicism, Josephine and her brother were baptized in the Anglican Church. Yeah, you're right, actually. Oh my goodness, yeah, I was a doctor, an Irish doctor. Worked at a place called Sacred Heart. Yeah, it was one of the naturopathic doctors I had seen back, my goodness, over 20 years ago now. Really good doctor, yes. It was at the Sacred Heart, that's what it was called. On the continent by the religious of the Sacred Heart. Interesting, they're talking about Irish history. Through prayer and study, Don Pedro once again regained his faith and longed to come back to the church, but he hesitated to take such a step because of the affection he bore his wife. What was his joy to learn that she too, unknown to him, had determined to become a Catholic. It was the time of the Oxford movement, when such conversations were common in England, and she had been vividly impressed by the example of a minister who had embraced Catholicism. Little Josephine and her brother were then given a Catholic baptism, and from that day on, their father was one of the leaders of the church in England, an intimate friend of Cardinal Wiseman, and admirably generous to every Catholic cause. And admirably generous to every Catholic cause. The Pope granted him the privilege of reserving in his private chapel the Blessed Sacrament, before which, enveloped in his Spanish cape, he knelt in prayer many a night. At the time that Raphael first knew her, Josephine de Zaluta was a most accomplished person, knowing 5 languages perfectly: Spanish, Latin, English, French, and Italian. She was unquestionably, even then, a great lady, one well suited to become the wife of a rising young diplomat. On February 3rd, 1863, Raphael and Josephine were married in London. The second son of this couple, later Raphael Cardinal Mary de Val, was born at 10:08 on the morning of October 10th, 1865, at number 21, Portland Place, West, in London, the same house in which all of their 5 children, Alfonso, Pedro, Domingo, and Maria as well, were to be born. On October 11th, the second son was baptized in the Spanish chapel by Canon H. Hearn and given the names Rafael, Maria, Jose, Pedro, Francisco de Bora, Domingo de Val, and Gerardo de la Santissima, Trinidad. His godparents were his maternal grandfather and his paternal grandmother. From earliest childhood, little Raphael was sunny-tempered, in rather delicate health, daring and mischievous. His idol was the tall father Gerald O'Reilly, who at Ushaw College has tutored to several in the family, and who came often to visit the Mary DeVals. How Raphael loved to roll up into a ball and let his uncle Don Pedro de Zuleta toss him out of an open window into the arms of Father O'Reilly. When this uncle, returning from a trip to Spain, brought back a set of child-sized vestments and a little chalice of lead for his nephew, Raphael's happiness was unbounded. After he had dressed up in his cassock and shovel hat of the variety then worn by the Spanish clergy, his father, who enjoyed sketching, made a drawing of him, labeling it Don Basilio, the priest. But however much others teased him, Raphael took his game of saying Mass very seriously. His mother encouraged him in this, seeing to it that he lacked nothing for his miniature altar. One day at his grandmother's house he took a glass of water and a cookie, raising them in turn, and said, "This is what I shall do when I say Mass." On another occasion, when led by his nurse to say good night to the family, he drew a biscuit from his pocket, and lifting it high, said, "I will do the same with the host when I am priest." Raphael delighted in listening to his parents' priest-guests talk about their sacerdotal duties, plying them with questions and asking them to recite the prayers they knew by heart. He took a keen interest in preparations for the daily Mass said in their private chapel, and at the earliest possible age learned all responses so as to be able to act server with his older brother Alfonso. The English nurse hired by his mother to look after him often had quite a time with her little charge, whose sense of fun led him to hide his gloves just when she wanted to take him for a walk, or pretend that he did not hear her when she called. But he was always able to win back her favor promptly by his charming manner of contrition. One day, while walking with his nurse, he saw a funeral procession, and escaping her notice, he slipped away to follow it. When, after recovering him, she began to scold, he looked up at her and said with a small boy's candor, "But Mama told me those who die go to paradise, and I wanted to go to paradise too, with that dead man." Raphael learned his catechism at his mother's knee. One morning she was trying to bring home to him what infallibly meant in regard to the Pope. "Now, Raphael," she said, picking up a book bound in black leather from a nearby table and holding it out to him, "suppose that the Holy Father were to say this book was white. What would you do?" He looked at her astonished. "Oh, Mamma, the Pope would never talk such nonsense." Sometimes Mary's liveliness got him into trouble, as on the day when he pulled out the chair as a guest was sitting down, and then laughed hilariously at the latter's fall. Severely reprimanded, he ran over to his victim, earnestly begged his pardon, and would not be consoled until the person on whom the joke had been played had embraced him in forgiveness. Raphael's early childhood coincided with a stirring period in Spanish history, the Revolution of 1866 through 1874, when the Queen had to abdicate during the First Republic. To Paris went Raphael Sr. to receive from the hands of Queen Isabel all her jewels, while he secretly brought back to London with him for safekeeping. All the young Spanish secretary's energies were now poured into the task of restoring the monarchy, for which cause he went to the Primus to unite those of similar views. Meanwhile, the family had gone to Fullbeck, Eastcliff, Bournemouth, to live in a house which Josephine's father had built as a vacation spot for her younger sister, Mariana, always in frail health. The next years were spent either in Bournemouth or London. When the Mary DeVals were in London, they resided at 132 Harley Street, where they were privileged to have as their guest the young King Alfonso XII, who stayed with them during the time that the Republic lasted. Except for his school days at the military academy at Sandhurst, it was from this house that he at last left for Spain to take up his throne once more. One day when Raphael was about 7, his mother planned a surprise for Alfonso, whose arrival from Sandhurst they were expecting. "When the king comes in," she said to her second son, "I want you to play the Royal March for him on the piano." This idea did not appeal to Raphael at all, since he was shy about performing in public, but the more he refused, the more insistent his mother became. Finally, Pedro, who hated to see his big brother in difficulty, hit upon a scheme. Pedro had a whistle which Raphael very much admired. "Look, Raphael, if you'll play, I'll give you my whistle." Such a bargain was irresistible. Coming out from behind the sofa where he had retired in protest, Raphael sat down at that piano, and at the entrance of His Majesty gave quite a passable rendition of the Spanish national anthem. The incident was only one that revealed, during these childhood years, the closeness between the two brothers. They dressed alike in sailor suits, and once they had started school, were in the same class despite the difference in their ages. Indeed, has friends used often to remark, Raphael and Pedro were like a single person. When Raphael was 8, he was taken to see his uncle, Francis de Zaluta, then a Jesuit at Manresa. Here a jolly young priest asked him, teasing, what are you going to be when you grow up, Raphael?" "A priest." "Oh, a Jesuit, I suppose." "No, a bishop." "How's that for an ambitious son?" laughed his uncle later, telling the story to his sister Josephine and her husband. Soon the combined instruction of his mother and the pious English nurse was felt to be inadequate, and so Raphael went to Bournemouth, where his maternal grandfather lived. Here, together with Alfonso, Raphael, as a day pupil, continued his education at Fullbeck House, a school for boys conducted by a converted Protestant minister named Remington. A year later, Raphael was sent with brother Pedro to Baylis House in Slough, a thriving suburb several miles out of London. Classes here were conducted by the Butt family, 3 elderly spinsters and their brothers and nephews. Baylis House was, at the time, considered the best Catholic elementary school in all England. Indeed, its surroundings were truly beautiful, with spacious rolling lawns and picturesque clumps of trees. The enrollment included boys from Spain, France, and South America, as well as from England. The discipline was hardly lenient. More than once, young Raphael, because of a mistake in his playing, was struck on the fingers with the ruler by the Miss Butt, who taught him piano. But these childhood misfortunes did not distress him unduly. Of fragile constitution, he nevertheless surpassed his fellows in studies, learning easily and quickly in every subject taught. The ones who knocked him on the whistles are probably the ones depending on them to learn that piano, because they were probably the ones who got funding or had ties to those who paid for people to go and play publicly, which was very sought after back then. Probably. To be taken away, that or, what do they call it, reputation reasons. Well, if their son can play that well, so is my son's going to play just as good as theirs, and could be just a rift between the adults or a money thing. Probably. To be away from the family hearth was a real grief. However, He missed his mother sorely, opening his heart to her in regular letters, which she treasured all her life. In the summer of his 10th year, 1875, yes, and a lot of the ones who got smacked on the knuckles, who became rich from it, will say they appreciated that. Man, I'm so glad you knocked me on the knuckles. Yeah. Congratulations. You're a fucktard. Anyways, right, disciplined, right? Maybe you would have appreciated it better if they hadn't knocked you on the knuckles and maybe used a more, less violent, intrusive, hateful, abusive way of teaching you how to play the piano. I agree. You're welcome. Different times. Right. Intentions, goals. What's it seeking? Is it anxious? Depending on. Right. Right, because someone else will gladly sit in your seat and get knocked on the knuckles to reap that reward. I know. It's a never-ending fucking story, dude. Welcome to the club. I really hope the proper authorities here in Augusta, Maine do what they're supposed to do to help those kids. It just ceases to amaze us how people are so just sick and competitive and nasty, and how children and human beings suffer because of, what do they call it, the 7 deadly sins? Yeah, good Kevin Spacey movie. It really is. To be away from the family hearth was a real grief. However, and he missed his mother sorely, opening his heart to her in regular letters, which she treasured all her life. In the summer of his 10th year, 1875, Raphael Mary Duval made his first Holy Communion at the Jesuit Church on Richmond Hill, at the very edge of Bournemouth. One of the happiest events of his childhood was the marriage of his uncle, Don Pedro de Zaluta, to the beautiful Laura Shiel, third daughter of Sir Justin Shiel. Until Raphael's death, she remained a loyal and understanding friend, as did her younger sister, only 6 at the time of Laura's marriage. Raphael himself was 9, and her brother Dennis, who in 1874 had joined Raphael at Mr. Remington's. In 1876, the Marquise Mary Duval was transferred from London to Belgium, where he was to fill the post of minister plenipotentiary. That's a tough word. Plenipotentiary. Plenipotentiary. Plenipotentiary from Spain is the minister's name. Minister plenipotentiary from Spain. Can I just call you Po? Popo. Raphael, then 12 years old, was too young, his parents felt, to be left behind in England, and so he was enrolled at the Jesuit college Notre Dame de la Pax at 59 Rue des Brexleys in Namur, presided over by Father Gothals S.J., whose devotion to Saint Stanislaus was a bond between himself and this new student, equally enthusiastic about that saint. At this institution, founded in 1833, classes were entirely in French, but Raphael, having previously prepared himself in accordance with the entrance requirements, was soon able to follow the lectures easily and to converse with readiness. The new environment was in many ways stimulating and pleasant. However, despite frequent visits to Brussels, where the Mary Duval's family was stationed, the distance between Madame Mary Duval and her dear second son was too great for her maternal solitude. which desired to have him near enough for her to keep personal watch over his now somewhat precarious health. Since the foreign students at Namur were very much in the minority, they felt somewhat isolated from the native Belgians, many of whom could leave each evening to enjoy the affection of a home circle, and so Raphael was not regretful when, in October of 1878, his father decided to transfer him to another Jesuit school in Brussels itself. Alfonso and Pedro had preceded him by 1 year to this college, known today as St. John Berchmans. These two, however, were boarders during their entire stay. It was determined by a family council that Raphael, because of his impaired health, should stay at home at least part of the time, and thus he was listed at the school as a demi-pensionnaire. Raphael was more than proud of his brother Alfonso, who was graduated from the rhetoric program in 1880 with the rank of 5th in his class, and who bore away the Prix de Sagacité, and onward bestowed by the vote of the students themselves, with the approval of the professors. Raphael's own transcript of credits from Notre Dame was evidence of his hard work while there, but at St. Michael's his frail health became a definite obstacle. Although at first he was put in the 4th Latin class, his strength was such that he could not keep up and had to repeat his course with Pedro, who was a year younger. Inwardly, Raphael was glad rather than distressed at this failure. It was so easy to say that he was willing to suffer for our Lord, but only actual test of his loyalty could prove this willingness, so he was happy to offer up what to some might have been a crushing humiliation. Once, over this rather hard beginning, Raphael made rapid progress. Each week the Jesuits gave out a card to each boy with his marks, pink, yellow, green, or white, and his achievement merited. Raphael's was always pink, representing the highest grades. Despite his roguish disposition, inherited no doubt from his witty Andalusian father, he always received as well the prizes for good conduct. Andalusian, 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 father. Alfonso, even by dint of working as hard as ever he could, never managed to come off with more than the yellow card, but he did not mind. Such satisfaction did he take in the excellence of his younger brother, to whom he was so close. Their separation, after only 2 years together at St. Michael's, was a sad event indeed for both of the brothers. A spirit of fun pervaded these school years, which found vent in tennis, riding, shooting, dancing, swimming, or the water jug battles which made havoc of the bedrooms when all 3 boys were home over a weekend. One time their Uncle Joe, devoted to Raphael, took a prominent part in such a fight, to the amazement of a classmate named de Russell, who had come home with the Mary DeVals, and to the immense delight of his nephews. Their visitor could not get over the respectable middle-aged uncle involved in this midnight fray. Dramatic exploits were a colorful phrase of these college years. Raphael's aptitude for the stage was soon discovered, and he appeared in such roles as Flavius Clemens in the tragedy Jean de la Valette, or as the devil in La Mémoire du Diable, a variation on his surname which greatly amused his St. Michael's friends, one of whom, Herman Ricoeur, insisted he pose for a sketch in his costume of Mephistopheles. Declamations were another of his special talents, much enjoyed by his campus audiences. In the refectory, Father Stordeo beamed in fatherly affection over his boys, while Father Coquelicorin tried to counteract this leniency with his own stern eye. Raphael and his nearest companion Edward made use of the time for lessons in Spanish. Patiently and with many a joke he would teach his friend the Spanish names for table, chair, bread, water, brown sauce, preserved apples, the apron worn by the Jesuit brother who served them, and even the terrible spectacles of Father Coquelin, whose apparent severity scarcely disguised his real benevolence. When the year came to an end, Raphael presented his pupil with a leaf torn out of his exercise book and inscribed thus: I, Raphael Mary Duval, master of idioms, confer on Monsieur E.S., who has passed an examination in which he has given proof of an extraordinary memory, a diploma of distinction. Carefully Edward put it away as a keepsake of his angelic Mary, never cross, never jealous, always an ideal companion. In 1880, Raphael was chosen president of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, an organization of Mary which was always to remain dear to him, and he prepared for the annual meeting a report hailed with praise for its precision and completeness. In addition, he was chosen secretary for the Congregation of the Immaculate Conception. Never one to be ostentatious about his religion, Raphael even so was accepted by teachers and fellow students alike as a person of deep personal piety and given responsibilities in accordance with this reputation. The buildings of St. Michael's were wonderfully adapted to the pranks of its students. Winding stairways, long corridors, dusky rooms. The college was truly a labyrinth of hiding places. The poor Jesuits had an especially difficult time in maintaining orderly ranks among the boys as they marched back from the church, for at the foot of the Escalier d'Honneur there was a magnificent sculpted beast that awaited the caressing pats of each boy's hand as he filed past. What kind of a beast? I don't know, a magnificent sculptured beast. Only the sudden appearance of Father Bayard, thin, wiry, with flashing eyes, whose 100 lines of Horace apiece was a frightful penalty indeed, could hasten along the band of scholars. Right, kind of like doing the rosary, go say 10 Hail Marys kind of a thing, right? So this was called the 100 lines of Horace apiece. One of the high spots of the year was the construction in the larger court of a tent to house the audience at the annual distribution of prizes. For several weeks, Raphael and his friends used any pretense during classes to get to a window where they might inspect the advance of this structure, which opened onto the steps descending from the chapel. What an exciting background music to recitation the blows of the hammer made as scenery was built for the play that always accompanied such a ceremony. A railway station one year for the voyage of Monsieur Pétion. An African setting another year for a production starring the Baron Descamps. And how proud the Mary Duvals were of their son when the day of his charming humility and ease when the day of his prizes came. Maria especially was thrilled when her Raphael, with his charming humility and ease, accepted the award for the best of the altar servers, or the Prix de Sagesse. His mother kept all such marks of recognition, even the pink slips issued weekly, and checked très bien. Raphael himself valued these honors only insofar as they brought pleasure to his family. he himself preferred to any of them the ornate rebus of his name, which his beloved father, Kekens, professor of poetry, had drawn for him one day, and which for many years he was to use a bookmark. Kekens, Kieckens. Some of his best hours were spent in the classroom of this priest, from whom he learned much more than Latin poetry. Together with a fellow student, Raphael acted as assistant librarian under his direction. A friendship was thus born which concluded only with the good priest's death. Mary was fond of all his professors, Father Worset van Cunnis and the learned Father Francis van Innis, for 13 years professor rhetoric at St. Michael's. Under the special guidance of the latter, during his last year at the college, he attained the following places in his class. For a foreign student, this was a commendable record indeed. Whenever Raphael went, Spain, England, Belgium, new friends were quickly his because of his extraordinary winning manner, frankness, and irrepressible joyousness. St. Michael's was no exception. He will be a remarkable man, these fellow students began telling each other soon after his arrival, and that conviction grew as the years 1878 to 1883 revealed his tremendous gifts and deep spirituality. Among his classmates were some young men of great talent and of great sanctity. In the first category was Hermann Ricker, destined to become a famous artist. In the second, Louis Mertens, later a Salesian father, who was to die at Liege in 1920 in the odor of sanctity. The class just younger than his included remarkable students: Prince Ferdinand de Croix, Valery Gilly, author and eventually member of the Royal Academy. In the class immediately above him were Ernest Hello, man of letters, and Emily van der Veen, later a noted painter. His most intimate friend, however, was Edward van Smissen de Alost, who would later serve as professor at the nearby University of Liege. In June of 1882, Raphael was given an unusual privilege in that he, with another student from St. Michael's, was selected to serve at the solemn High Mass, at which their Royal Highness priests, Prince Baudouin and Princess Enrichta, were to receive their first Holy Communion. Enrichta. King Leopold II of Belgium loved lavish festivities on such an occasion, and thus great preparations were made at St. James, the church of the royal family in Brussels. The splendid uniforms and glittering gowns, the banks of flowers, the resounding gloria of the choir, and the rhythmic dignity of the Mass itself appeared to Raphael's instinct for poetry, even though from his youth court life struck him as too far from the simplicity of the gospel to be desirable. All too rapidly the years at St. Michael's, romantic as a medieval fortress, and almost as isolated from the busy urban life around it, came to an end. He had gained every day spent with the gates that enclosed its buildings. The Jesuits combined rigor and indulgence in a way that showed deep comprehension of the possibilities, but also of the frailties of human nature. Contact with them during this formative stage increased Raphael's longing that he too, like his uncle, might be part of St. Ignatius' glorious company. But heavy as a stone in his subconscious was the knowledge of how ill this dream would suit his father's high ambitions for him. And we'll pause there on page 13. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I hope so. Oh wow, that's 50 minutes. That's definitely long enough. Went a little bit over. The birds are still up there. The sun has moved over there more, so